Is this on? Boarding the Thunderhawk. Here we go. What up, everybody? Scuffy here. Special offer? What? I like that clock.
If they say I'm mad.
Ooh, nice. Hang on. First off and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, if you don't have curves, your time is running out. You've got 5 hours left to go. And don't get me wrong, it's a sexy alt art. He's also in the shop today, and this video is coming out late. By the time this video is up, most likely anybody who's watching it will have missed their opportunity. Such is the way of things. That was actually announced that he was going to be in the shop this weekend. He might end up moving down here into the VIP shop. I'm not really sure. It's got some quotes. It's basically it's Night Lord time is what it is. That's where we're at. But we've got some nifty little UI enhancements that was mentioned. We had a Q&A this last Wednesday, so 3 days ago. There was a Q&A on the Discord, and the game developers had some interesting information, some hard fact information, which hinted at the UIs, which gave us updates, or gives a heads up rather, if you will, about the Curse Night Lord special. The Kolth event, the next expansion, is coming out. Kolth is the next set, which makes a lot of sense, which was kind of anticipated. We know that the Word Bearers, we know that the Ultramarines are going to be part of it. We don't know yet who the third Legion is that's going to be involved. There is some speculation. We'll get into that later. I don't like speculating too soon, too early to tell. We just started up this event here, and here's just my 2 cents on it. If you're playing this game, try to find yourself a Chaos Warlord and win with Chaos, because the game needs more cards that are going to remove stun. So 1 energy card, it removes stun from a friendly unit. It doesn't do much more than Pi Alpha, but it's a neutral. It's cheap, doesn't heal health, but it removes it from a friendly unit, which can include your Warlord and Demon, anything. So very good card. I would much rather have that version in the game than I would rather have the Loyalist version, if you will. So what I want to talk about today is not Lehman Ross, is not the UI enhancements, which, by the way, I mean, if we wait here long enough, you'll notice that the screen is brighter, right? The screen is brighter, and then you'll eventually start to see a little bit of animation. We get some ships appearing there in the corners, flying in towards Terra, because that's when it really starts to get going. But we've seen some refinements to this right here. Whoa, extreme close-up. Whoa. Whoa. Yeah, it's extreme close-up. Except for a few guys, it's very jarring. I like it, but the first time I saw Sevatar up that close, I was an Icona Shuriken. It kind of took me aback a little bit. So nifty. Takes some getting used to. Still getting the Horus Lupercal image that is not the card image. But whatever. So we just got a couple of things there, and I think they fixed some patches and bugs related to a couple of things. There's still some issues with replays. There's still some issues with specifically a warlord here that I want to show off and talk about, Shabran Darr. Now, the last time we talked, I mentioned that Shabran Darr, in the most recent patch upgrade, was one of the warlords who received an update. Him and Flamemaster Modron from the Night Lords have both received some changes, and I've just been really having good fun with him. So here's the thing. His ability is the same, but he gained a new passive. His passive is now when damaged in combat, which means being attacked, not taking tactics, not Karn extra ping damage, just straight somebody attacks you, even if they've got sneak attack or not. Deal 1 damage to random enemy. Okay, all right, so it's kind of like he's getting mad and he kind of lashes out. It's kind of like the opposite of Karn, if you will, kind of the inverse. So he's got that, but his ability remains the same. And I got to be honest with you, this deck hasn't changed much from what I was using prior to his update, but it's a smidge more fun to play. Now, the downside is he did have 35 health. He now has 30 health, and that does put a little bit of a cramp on his style, but not noticeably, because the world leaders have got some pretty powerful cards to kind of compensate. So here's the deck I've been running, the deck list. And you'll notice right off the bat, it's not very heavy in the legendary department. We'll talk about that in just a second. What I do want to talk about is the energy curve on this deck is very, very low. You know, we've got a lot of 3s and 4s, and that's about it, and a chunk of 1 cost. Because for the most part, he's kind of I don't want to say he's a hard meta choice. He's not really, but he is really control the board style. You want to be able to use his ability every turn if possible, and then play other cards. So the lower energy cards are more important, and then a few select higher cost cards. Now you'll note I've got 16 tactics. This is a very tactic heavy deck as well. It's I mean, if you play Erlang, it's not too unfamiliar to you. There might be some additional troops in here that you might kind of wonder why. Why is that the case? Why Drask Scouts? Are they really that important? Well, they're important because I have 2 Sedition Skates, but that's not why they're also in there. They're in there because their backlash draws me a card. And in this deck, it's not a bad thing to have, because I want to be able to draw Armor of Mars as many times as possible. And you'll see in a couple of the replay games that I've done here that that is very important, it's very helpful, it's very frustrating to the opponent, but that's not like a luck thing. That's kind of by design. You know, I've got Drask Scouts, I've got Strike and Fade, I've got Void Engagement, I've got Armor of Mars itself. I could throw in a Merciless, but I think that's a little bit redundant, and I don't want to damage myself if possible. And then I've got, you know, you've got your standard World Leaders package, right? You've got your Serric Land Speeders, you've got your Goldstone Hunters, you've got your No Survivors, and then the old Sweep in Advance, right? That always helps finish off games, and it still works just the same here as it does in, you know, Angron, Karn, Erlen, whatever. That hasn't changed. I like throwing out cards, though, especially with Dar's ability. Lork Squad is not a troop that your opponent can ignore. They're 3/4, okay, but their rage, dealing 1 damage to a random enemy, is pretty offensive, especially if they attack it for 2, then they take an extra 1, then they take another 3 plus an extra 1. They could essentially take, 8 damage from this 1 troop, depending on how they go about getting rid of it. If you're able to attack some lower 1 attack troops, they could do even more. Now the Routh Landspeeder, I could put in Wraith, right? Same cost. But I went with Routh Landspeeder for a little bit more reason. He's still bounceable by Melgator for the same ability. However, I like being able to have that cleave option. That cleave assisting my ability helps me do potentially 5 damage to troops adjacent to the Warlord. And that helps me deal with those bigger, larger threats. Do I need to have 2? Maybe not. And Skane Squad, first off, I love Skane Squad. I think the artwork has always been cool. I like the idea of World Leader heavy troops before they were phased out, but before they were, I guess, ground out, essentially is what happened there. Or they got tired of shooting from afar and ran out of ammunition. I don't know. But I like the picture. I've always liked that artwork. And their ability is just beef. Their ability is beef. So you go from Routh Landspeeder, you got your Argus Brawn, but we'll get to him. You got your Routh Landspeeder, you got your Skane Squad, you got your Lork Squad. These are all 3 target troops that your opponent has to deal with, wants to deal with, will hopefully find ways to destroy them, bounce them, or whatever. And then you've got your Argus Brawn who can kind of follow up with that late game if your opponent hasn't responded with anything else. Now, again, it's possible to swap out Wraith Land Speeders for Wraith. He's got the same kind of return value, but in a different way. Can they? Can they? Can the Ghost... I have to collect my thoughts here. Hang on a second. No, they can't. No, they can't. I don't think they can. That's like more of an exorcism thing. I don't think the Ghostbusters can stop the Ghost Rider, because there's an exorcism involved. There's a possession. That's my stance. If you disagree, please hit me up with your comments. Let me know what you're thinking on that one. That's completely unrelated, but these are the things that hit my messages at 10:10 at night. My friend is just like, I guess I'm not sleeping. You must be up making Horus Heresy Legion videos. You must have a question. I did ask him earlier, though, if Steve Rogers went back in time and marries Peggy Carter, then does he possibly have some direct relation to Sharon Carter? In which case, did he help raise the woman who he would have assistance from when he fought Hydra? And that's just in the movie universe, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. Anyways, Informant Network is your anti-stealth, and again, board-wide damage. Now, you could argue that 2 artillery strike and 2 no survivors is overkill. And there's not one right way to play Shabran Darr. I built this one because, like I said, this is very similar to how I already had it built prior to his change. But also because I like that kind of play style, just consistent, high damage, crank out, clear the board, clear off threats, and then end the game strong. That's what Darr in this deck can do. You can very, very easily turn this build, take a Karn build or an Angron build, maybe not necessarily an Angron build, but take the high attack troops or the support troops and go that route. Now, before I had Void Engagement, I had the Slurn Squad in there, and you could go that route if you don't have Void Engagement. You're not going to go do direct damage to your opponent's Warlord, but it is a troop on the board that your opponent has to respond to, and you're most likely going to get the same amount of cards. Very rarely do I ever get more than 1 card from a Slurn Squad. The problem with a Slurn Squad is it leaves you open to flank, or troops that flank, or Goldstones even can take them out with your opponent's Warlords. Then you still have a troop to respond to, which again, with Darr's ability, is not impossibly hard to deal with. That's a piece of cake, not a big deal. However, if I'm going to pay 2 energy, I'd rather just pay 1 energy, draw a card, do 3 damage outright. So that's how I swapped out for that, but it's optional. Melgator is also in there because he can bounce, but once he's bounced, he can be Sedition Gate, and then I get replay value out of him. The Conqueror as a 1-of is probably best. You could probably squeeze in a 2-of in there if you felt that troops were really, really nasty. You're going up against a lot of ward troops, a lot of Bolvi getting buffs, although I got to be honest with you, if you're playing a Bolvi, it's going to be hard for him to buff his troops enough to withstand the damage that you can put out by the time he gets to that point. By the time he's got 5 or 6 energy, you've got your ability, as well as most likely a tactic or even 2 tactics to throw out in addition to that, or a troop to throw out and clear off his threat, and he's back to square 1, and you're still up. And his ward is not going to do any good because your ability is a direct target. So things to keep in mind. So that's the deck list. Now, again, it could change. This isn't a locked-in situation, but the build is aimed at 2 things. It's aimed at doing board clearing and drawing Armor of Mars. So I've got some really interesting replays. I really think through the course of what you'll see here, and what I've been seeing in practice a lot, is the up and comings. I think we're on the edge. We've still got some people hanging on to what worked in ladder last month, but I think with these changes, I think we're going to see some of these decks, some of these playstyles start to hit your general ladder, your Mars and your Terra for sure. And these decks are good decks and they're fun, and you should try new things. There's nothing wrong with it. People have been asking for changes and updates to Darr for ages, and we're not done. I make this video now with the full understanding that it's very possible by next week he could be changed. This passive could be gone. It could be the same. He could have 5 health. He could have Survivor 5. He could start with an extra card. I don't know. But again, this deck wasn't built around his change. This deck was already built, and I threw out like 4 or 5 cards and swapped in 4 or 5 cards. It's the same deck. The ability works the same, and I play it the same way as I played it before. The only exception is I'm having more fun with it. Yeah, that's it. That's all there is to it. He's always been consistent against Raven Guard, against Night Lords. He's always been pretty pressing, and I just have a little bit more fun doing it now because, it's nice. It's nice when people don't expect to see him, and I think maybe in a month people will be seeing him more often. So, well, maybe not, maybe less than a month. You never know. So, anyways, I'm gonna pause out. I'm gonna let you guys see some replays, a couple games, really fun games. They were good games, and kind of give you my thoughts there, and then we'll go back into it and we'll talk about how best to play against this deck. So. Okay, so first off, one of the great things, starting with an Armor of Mars in hand, that's a keeper. Even though it's a higher cost card, it's going to come into play in the game. Shabran Darr, so the way I've got him playing currently with the deck that I've shown, he really plays a lot like Captured Mandragorax. You spend a lot of time, poking, doing a little bit of damage, where you're going to be doing some damage. Now, in this matchup here, Modron, if it just came to ability versus ability, Modron's got more damage. He can do more damage than Shabran Darr can by using my ability. So I'm actually doing more damage if I face strike him. I'm using my ability only just to clear if I'm going to be able to clear troops, if that's possible. The long game ultimately favors me if I can get an Armor of Mars to go off once, twice, 3 times especially, and I've just whittled down his troops. But otherwise, I'm putting that pressure on him to really force him to consider what he has to do. Now, he's got to consider what he's doing here. Is he going to stun my Warlord, or does he stun the big bad boys? He's going to go with the stun Warlord and then give the can attack. Well, I've got a pretty beefy ability on those heavy support squads. So even if he stuns my Warlord, I'm still pumping out damage. All the while, my hand is increasing, and that's going to give me the option for a lot of things through the course of the game, especially in the late game. At that point, I then have the option to use splash damage like no survivors, artillery strike, or even just to bait out things. I can use the speeders there with the Sedition's Gate if I so choose. I usually use that with a scout, but if I need to, they work in a pinch. It's a little bit costlier, but I'd rather use that than sacrificing the Lork squad, because the Lork squad actually can do that retaliatory damage, and that's actually really, really crucial. And I mean, this has more troops than a Captured Mandragorax, but now I'm going to be able to pump it up, and if I'm not giving him many bodies to kill with his Ekratrez, he's just going to have a 4 stealth troop, and that's okay. That's okie day. And as you can see, I mean, I've got just in my hand, I get that Armor of Mars back. I can really annoy him. I've got one more card draw with that Void Engagement in my hand to increase the chance of me drawing it up again, which I'm going to go ahead and just do here. Do some random damage, tack it up, and even though I'm going to eat some from his troops, it's more than enough, and especially I've got almost a full hand. Now that is the one thing I think really where the captured Mandragorax playstyle with Shabran Darr, if they put out, if your opponent manages to put out a bunch of high cost troops, high health troops, captured Mandragorax kind of has a tougher time if he doesn't have the higher damage cards in his pool. But the world leaders have kind of got that covered, having no survivors, which does a straight guaranteed 2. But then they've also got those land speeders. And you can use those if you need to in a pinch for a really, really healthy troop like a Custodes or that front line. And you can clear out those threats. And as you can see, I'm still up in cards in hand. I've actually got lethal here on the board right now. And I think he realizes, I mean, it's just a matter of time. Just with those 2 cards alone, not even counting the sweep in advance, is more than enough to do, man. And that's how you just outpace them. That's how you outpace the Modron. So this game here is a different beast altogether. Again, Saul Tarvitz. Here's another warlord who we have seen get a little soft buff, not a direct buff. Modron got a direct buff. Here we are. Saul Tarvitz, the Emperor's Children have received several nice upgrades to their cards, so I'm really kind of curious to see how this game is going to play out. And I gotta be honest with you, when I was playing this game here, up until about I think the 4th or 5th turn, I thought this was a bot. I really wasn't paying much attention. It was kind of bot behavior, kind of typical behavior. I wasn't really thinking anything of it. And then I think he played a card here this following turn that made me think, oh, this is a player. No, and that's not a slam. I mean, that's just, you get into a robot mode. Sometimes you see the same Tarvitz deck in practice over and over again, playing the same moves, and it doesn't surprise you much. But then when I saw that Sardarian, I was like, wait a minute, that's unusual. Okay, this is a real guy. All right, I got to play a little bit more smarter then. So what I did there is I buffed up my Lork squad, and then because they can do damage, little pings, but 1 damage is 1 damage. Each time they're taking it, it's worth it to give them that little extra health. And he's going to have to deal with either a 4 attack, or he's going to have to deal with some extra damage from having to kill him out, which in this case kind of broke that shield, which was nice. I've got those 2 Sedition Skates, but I don't really have anything to go on them with, so I'm probably going to have to take some pain from that Sardarian squad. And that's okay because he's not going to gain shield from me. And I know that, so I'm just going to go straight to Tarvitz's face because I know that I have the potential to outdamage and hopefully out-heal him. Whereas if I can get Tarvitz down low, his only late game option really becomes Pride of the Emperor. So long as I can stay out of that lethal range and do more damage to him, then I'm doing okay. And then what I'm doing here at this point, just plugging away, using the same tactics, and I'm going to bait him out with a cleave troop. He's going to have to respond with one of those 2 guys. I know that's going to happen. He ends up buffing him up, keeping the front line and gaining the shield, but that's okay. He hasn't touched my warlord. Now this move, this surprised me, and I think maybe he was lining up something for his perfection. And it just ended up being a way to stun me more than anything, so he could keep that 7 alive. And that's okay, I'll just Armor of Mars. It was a lucky draw, but again, this deck here, the playstyle is number 1, damage, troop damage, splash damage, board control, right? Which, the Conqueror is probably your epitome of the best board control card you can have in the game, and when you have a board like that, that's a nice time to use it. So you've got that. You've got board control with his ability and with the World Leaders cards, which are just massively ridiculous. And then you've got card drawn. You've got the Scout here. You've got Sedition's Gate, which is going to destroy that and give me a card. You've got Strike and Fade to help you draw a card. You've got Void Engagement to help you draw a card. You've got Armor of Mars, which actually helps you draw a card So even if you're not getting Armor of Mars, you're still getting another card, and that helps whittle down the cards in your deck to increase your likelihood of drawing Armor of Mars. Now that's a very similar playstyle to your Erlin builds, your Erlin tactic builds, and late game, an Erlin playing 3 Armor of Mars is not unheard of. But this kind of operates kind of an in-between, because the ability that Darr has is not a 3 to the Warlord, it's just a 1, but it's really oppressive to troops. So the thing that kind of works against Erlin, Darr can respond better to, and has a good time doing it. And it's rainy. And if you saw those replays, if you pay attention and watch the whole thing, that's how it works. That's how it works in practice. That's how it works in theory. That's how it works. It's very consistent. It's very reliable. And you know what? If everybody's picking up their Night Lord, their curs in the shop, oh, he's not there. You have to go through the special offer button. Well, everybody's picking this thing up, or they're picking them up here with gems. You're going to see more Night Lords. You can expect to see more curs, and he plays the exact same as against curs as he does against Modrum. The only difference is I can use my ability more and not have to worry about taking 2 damage. That's it. I mean, I can control that board. Curs' support units, I'm not worried about. I'm not concerned about. Late game, if he goes into Night Hunter mode, I can usually have the damage up in my hand, save it up, break his stealth, or just wait till he can't go back into stealth and then finish him off strong. And that's how it goes. So, but how do you play against this deck? How do you fight this deck? Because let's face it, let's be honest with you. Anytime you see Armor of Mars played 1 or 2 times, it's annoying, right? It's annoying. I think I've gotten it up to 4 times played. That's a record. And that was, I think I could have played it a 5th time, but it wouldn't have been right. It would have been dirty, and that's not against a bot. That's just it was some of that was luck. The first 2 times was luck because it was a very early on and my deck was only half full, but the last 2 it was like, yeah, I'm going to be drawing this a lot more, and I don't want you to hate me or hate Darr before he really has had his time to shine. So anyways, but playing that card, that's annoying. This is a tactic heavy deck. This is a card heavy deck. The troops I have are kind of threat-oriented troops. You have to deal with them. Aside from the Drask Scouts, really, you don't want to leave Jubok sitting on the table. You don't want to leave Lork Squad sitting on the table for too long. You're going to just take extra damage for unnecessary reasons. If you have troops in hand, you don't want these guys hanging out there, right? And you definitely don't want this guy getting angry. The best ways to deal with Darr, because he has 30 health, is simply out damage him via tactics. Now, all the tactics I've got in my deck are primarily aimed to assist me clearing the board and keeping the board low, right? No survivors, artillery strikes. Those aren't mortar strikes. Those aren't direct damage onto the Warlord after I've cleared the board, and I might toy around with that. But his ability of flashing back that extra damage does not work if he is attacked like Modrum, using those two damage as opposed to my 1. He's going to out damage me. Nassau can do it. Loken, Nev. I mean, there's a lot of warlords who can do damage with cost. And then you've got like warlords who can do like Russ. Russ can really race it. Russ can race it hard if you can get ward troops out and just ward troops out, and then maybe get Gunnarsson out for a turn and heal as opposed to attacking with it. You can keep Russ around. But that's like a perfect draw game because it's very hard for the Space Wolves, because even though they've got ward, I still have my speeders, I still have my area damage. So it's not a guarantee. It's a hard game. It's a hard game at that point, but Russ has 10 additional health, and he potentially has the ability to attack me faster than I can get to use my tactics in that higher energy realm. If I only got 5 energy, I can only use my ability in 1 tactic, and at 5 energy, he can potentially put down 2 troops and pack attack. So there's that. You can stun. That always works. Martarian and Caleb Decima make it a much different game altogether. At that point, I'm more reliant on getting troops out on the board than my ability to clear his troops, and it becomes a different game altogether. You can also just straight up, if you're already packing it and playing it, an Edict of Censure, shield generators, those things right there eat through my tactics, force my style to play change dramatically. A shield generator I'm not going to be able to deal with right away because my 2 damage is just going to break its shield. It's still going to have 3 health, and then I've got to find a way to get rid of it, which I might be able to get rid of it with Goldstone, but there's no guarantee there. So, and then I'm throwing away a troop to deal with that, as opposed to dealing that 3 damage to a nastier troop. Alpha Legion poses a threat, potentially, if they repeatedly stun Darr. However, the thing with Alpha Legion is I can play a lot of my tactics cheap if I need to. The Heroine does not hurt me so much, so long as they don't copy my Armor of Mars. I can outlive them. They can play their one of many as many times as they want, but if they're making me draw more cards, I get to that point where I can play Armor of Mars 4 or 5 times, I can still do more damage to them. There was one game I took 10 damage from Heroine, and I still ended the game at 25 health. So it's possible. It was really, I'm sure it was really annoying to the Alpha Legion player. But, that's kind of the nature of this deck. It can go 2 different ways. If you're playing against an Alpha Legion and you get stymied with their energy and they ramp up and they shut you down, that might be harder. But if you're able to maintain consistency and you get that killer end-turn combo and you can deal, 7 to 11 health at the end of the game on their Warlord, that's going to end the game regardless. So, I think really though, it's just a matter of direct damage, out-direct damaging them, or potentially shutting down the tactics. Survivor helps. The Salamanders or cards that have Survivor have a little bit more of an edge if they can get out to the board earlier. But if I get the Conqueror and it's a late game, Survivor's not going to do you any good. And if your Survivor ability is not direct damage like the Roshan squad, that's going to annoy the heck out of me. That's going to chew through Darr's low health very quickly. But if it's something more like the... let's go into... Where are they? Let's go into the Sally's decks, because their sacrifice is really what... their sacrifice will never be forgotten. Anatar squad is not going to do anything. Anatar squad is not going to do anything to me, really. Epistolary Restan can. He's going to be very annoying to deal with, but it's potentially possible I've got answers for him. And then these higher health guys you really are just better off attacking with than sitting back on. So your Salamanders, Roshan Squad and Orbital Combat are kind of your best options in dealing with it. And then, going back into the Emperor's Children and the World and the Night Lords, those cards, the Emperor's Children, having shield or having that direct damage with Pride of the Emperor, if you're able to get that off early before I can get off Armor of Mars, you can push the lead. And that's really where it's going to kind of come into it. Being able to stun Darr and put troops down and buff them. And if you can't buff them with your, your perfect conditions, or ideal conditions rather, Unbreakable Focus, and Peak Condition, that's the other one. If you can buff your troops and keep them alive and outside my range, that's great. If you can't, I'm going to whittle them down real quick, and the game's not going to favor you because you are contingent on having troops out, and I'm contingent on clearing your troops, and our styles clash. One of us is going to win. and your victory is kind of banking on buffing them or giving them shield like the Sardarian squad. So there's definitely some good balance I think we're seeing in the game. It's not unbeatable. Dar's not, like, again, I've said no deck is unbeatable. Some decks simply just have better matchups against the other popular decks. I think Dar has some good matchups. He definitely has some bad matchups. And that's what I'm trying to highlight here. So there's options. And if you are playing these decks that you wish you had Dar to respond to, dive into it. Take a look. It's not too dirty to play the World Eaters if you're playing them a little bit differently. And again, if you want to play World Eater style, you totally can, but that's how I choose to run him. And again, I could swap out Wraith, throw him in there, maybe toy around with the Hidden Strength or even a Mace Varian now that Melgator doesn't do anything, but that cost of damage, although you know what I'm doing? I am thinking about doing this one. I am. Although I'll be honest with you, I used No Survivors and got a great demon from that with the ability between his ability and the other damage I had, and then I could throw down No Survivors on the troop that I had. That was a fun time. That was a fun time. I actually turned my troop into a demon because that it got 4 marks of chaos. So very cool. That potential's there. 4 cost versus 7 cost. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to include that in there. I would love to, just for the sake of it, but I'm not going to. At least not in this iteration. And you know what? Speaking of iterations, I would love to have another iteration of but I can't. There's no decks. There's no deck slots. No. Anyways, that's it for me, guys. I hope you learned a little bit of something. I hope you saw what you liked. I hope you give Dar a try. Test him out. Have fun with him. And, there's no right way to play him. And I think you'll enjoy him. I think he's rewarding, especially if you're getting frustrated by some of the troop decks that are out there. Bolvi, Russ. He's kind of nifty against Canis Vertex. This build might see some tweaking to combat the Canis Vertex threat, but I was able to destroy 3 weapons of the Canis Vertex with this deck and get Canis Vertex down to 8 health before a lucky Mortar Strike ended the game. And I think if I would have had 5 additional health, him at 35, that would have been enough to cinch it for me. No guarantee, but it's nice to think that, but I think he's got a really good chance to give Canis Vertex a hard time very easily. He's a threat to Custodes. He's a threat to anybody who likes to put troops on the board. So, and if you start seeing him too often, hopefully you learn something in terms of how to switch up your deck or how to switch your warlord choice to best fight him. So that's it for me, guys. I'm going to get going out of here. It's late, and now I'm going to have to think about if the Ghostbusters can defeat Ghost Rider some more, because I'm having second thoughts on it. Because, they did defeat Zool. It was kind of like, a god from another dimension. And, technically, Dana was possessed by Zool. I don't know, man. Science. Alright, that's it for me, guys. Keep playing Legions.
Alright, that wraps it up for me. If you liked what you saw, feel free to like and subscribe, add any comments below, and if you think the video might be useful or the series might be useful, feel free to share that with other players that you know as well. And we'll talk to you later.